For the past couple years, the ultimate power has just been held by the people that own the tours.
There's lots of these little nuances of the game where the players may want a voice as a collective.
I think this is going to bring, hopefully, some accountability to the tour. And I really am excited that Zane got picked for this role. He's been vocal about things he doesn't like about the tour.
Why is it that these players associations form in other sports? It's to eliminate power imbalances. And we're already starting to see more players recently sign with the tours, and maybe if they know that the players get a voice, they're more willing to sign.
Can we talk about the new SLK Era paddle?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you like about it? And then I'll tell you what I like.
Honestly, it's super stable in your hands. It's a lot of power, but I really like that because of the dwell time, I can really take pace off the ball if I need to. And honestly, just the technology is probably my favorite Selkirk paddle that they've released.
There are two different shapes, the elongated and the wide body.
Yeah, brand new shapes.
I am obsessed with the wide body. For the first time ever for a wide body paddle, I'm not mishitting my two-handed backhand. I'm not mishitting my counter because you still have that longer handle. I'm super, super impressed with it. And if you guys want to go check out the new SLK Air paddle, go to selkirk.com and choose elongated or wide body. And I promise you, you are going to love it because we're obsessed. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Pickleball Connection podcast. I'm Danea.
And I'm Barrett.
And we're stoked to be hanging out with you guys today. Today, we're going to be doing a little CTN or Cruise the News episode. So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, so we're going to hop right into it today. We saw some news recently that the UPAA, I guess, which is the governing body over the PPA, which is the Professional Pickleball Association Tour style tour. And then there's the MLP, which is the team style event, Major League Pickleball. And so both of these organizations have recently come out that they've formed a players association. So the UPA will have Zane Navratil. There was like a vote amongst players. Zane got chosen to basically represent the pros. And we wanted to talk about this because this is not uncommon for other sports, in the MLB, NBA, NFL. There's typically players associations that form to kind of be the voice of the players. So I was kind of interested because, in some other sports, these players associations form to kind of protect the players, give them a voice, to protect them even against ownership and stuff like that. And so in this instance, I don't necessarily think that they're being protected against, from the MLP owners, but rather kind of the implications of the tours. Like the tour and the governing body of the UPA, like the players haven't really had a voice. And there's been a lot of areas maybe that the players needed a voice when it came to paddle regulations, ball regulations, serve rules. The list kind of goes on and on. So I was just going to kind of throw this over to you. What are your thoughts about do you think this was necessary? Do you think this was needed? And what are some areas do you think the pros and even the sport is going to benefit from having the players be represented amongst the growth of the sport?
It's interesting. I'm maybe not as well versed in how this works in other sports. So maybe you could speak a little bit on that. But I do think that it is really important that something like this is established because, for the past couple years, the ultimate power has just been held by the people that own the tours. And we've seen some instances that, it probably would have been really helpful to have a players committee. For example, I think of there's been a couple fines that have been kind of dealt out. Mm-hmm. And players really haven't been able to weigh in on it. It's just been this blanket oh, we're going to fine you $50,000 or we're going to fine you, this amount.
Or there's even, they've publicly talked about certain players being known for hooking calls, and should there be consequences if the same player is repeatedly kind of making, I know they've come a long way with line calls and the replay system on championship court at least.
Yep.
But, there's lots of these little nuances of the game where the players may want a voice as a collective.
Yeah. So I think this is a long time coming. I think this is really good. for the players. I think this is going to bring hopefully some accountability to the tour. And I really am excited that Zane got picked for this role. I think Zane is a player in my mind who he's kind of had some, I don't even want to call him controversial takes, but he's been vocal about things that, for example, Zane plays on the PPA tour. He's been vocal about things he doesn't like about the tour. Like, I actually am glad that they picked somebody like Zane because I feel like he has a little bit of a backbone, and that he does a good job voicing it. So I actually think that was a great vote even for kind of the president of that role. I think that's a good.
And you kind of talked about why is it that these players associations form in other sports? And typically you kind of actually answered your own question. I think it's to eliminate power imbalances. Mm-hmm. So that could be power imbalances amongst players. That could be amongst, like the PPA and the tour. These certain people are calling all the shots. Like, for example, even the players associations in other sports have a lot of kind of way and buy-in when it comes to like the working conditions of being a player or like working for the organization. And obviously the PPA and MLP have dished out requirements for these players of like, you have to be at this many events. If not, this happens. And, these players are kind of subject to whatever they say, and we've even seen some players that have kind of stepped back, like that haven't wanted to sign with the PPA tour. And hopefully this will allow more players. And we're already starting to see more players recently sign with the tours. And maybe if they know that the players get a voice, they're more willing to sign, So It'd be interesting because, I'll be interested to see kind of what do the players actually want?
And to your point of what you just said, I think, we've mentioned this on the podcast before, this kind of era that we refer to as the tour wars, when MLP and PPA were not owned by the same organization. They were different governing bodies, basically. And it was interesting because one of the main reasons that players at that time were saying, I want to sign with MLP is because they didn't like how they were being treated in the PPA.
Yeah, there was rumors that they were kind of getting their pay super late. They weren't getting paid on time. They didn't know, they kind of had doubts that that the PPA tour was going to follow through.
Yeah.
And they kind of thought that the MLP was more trustworthy. What's kind of interesting, is that the leader of the MLP is no longer the leader of the MLP. And the leader of the PPA is still very much involved. So it's kind of interesting, but...
Yeah. But all that to say is, it goes to show the players at that time were like, I'm distrusting of who's in power of this tour. And I want to put my trust in something else. So anyway, all that to say, Tour Wars is no longer a thing. It is now, they're both under the UPA, but... Now, hopefully, this establishes some safety among the players that...
And I don't think they've really released many statements on, like, internally. They haven't really, like, come out and said... The players haven't come out and released a statement of, like, this is why we started it. So we don't really know exactly what they're doing, but we can kind of speculate a little bit. And I think it's interesting that, they've recently kind of redone the pay structure for professionals. They've recently made it more of a payout structure. But what we talked about on a previous podcast is that the payout structure favors the top players, and certain players that are breaking into the sport, it's almost the new payout structure is making it even harder to break into the sport where, if they would have started playing a couple years ago, they were getting these like contracts that were probably too big. And now for some of them, they're probably too small. And so it's just, there was a lot of kind of up and down. And so really what a players association can do is it allows the players to have a little more leverage. And they didn't have any leverage really.
Yeah.
The most leverage that they had was when they were in like bidding wars back in, a couple years ago. And now it's kind of, I think that they are seeing, we need this because the PPA tour is kind of just calling the shots, or the MLP is kind of just calling the shots. But I am interested as well for things like rule changes, who's in charge of that, right? And the players should get a say in like, can you toss the ball up? Like, you remember like a couple tournaments ago, maybe
MLP.
6 months ago, actually, I don't know exactly.
Say it was like the first MLP.
They did a trial rule.
Yeah.
They literally were like, we're going to try this rule out for a tournament, get feedback.
Yeah, serve however you want.
And we're going to talk to the players after, and we may keep the rule. And then players were just throwing the ball, making contact at their chest.
Dude, that was I think I remember seeing Christian Alshon hitting the wildest serves I've ever seen.
And I think that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
That's the issue, is that like, if you have a governing body, hopefully, I'm sure Zane's a smart kid, and I'm sure he'll get feedback, take polls from the pros, test the temperature, and come to a consensus of like, and hopefully, this is formed in such a way that the UPA really listens to the people that probably know what's best for the sport that are actually playing it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I think it's exciting. Like you said, I'm sad for whenever something happens where they release a statement or whatever.
Right. So, yeah, we just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I'm sure there's more that's going to be released. This was kind of recently announced, but we'll kind of touch on that more as more information comes out. Hey, have you heard of the new Play More app?
No. What is it?
Basically, the Play More app is like a stress-free scheduling app for pickleballers. So I don't know, we've struggled a lot in group text trying to organize play. You'll set it up and somebody will just like the text. And I'm like, does that actually mean you're coming or not?
Yeah, and it's like, you never know how many people you have, like what rating they are. It's kind of annoying.
It can kind of just be a nightmare to try to organize groups because group texts are just not fun. So basically, the Play More app lets you send out invitations. You get an RSVP list. If somebody doesn't show, there's a wait list that will actually like put somebody right into.
No way.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Dang, that's awesome. What's it called?
It's called the Play More app. So you should download it at the App Store, or you can go to getplaymore.com if you want to look at it online. We just wrapped up MLP Salt Lake. So I would like to just point out this night and day difference between the last two MLP events.
Love it. Let's talk about it.
2 MLP events ago, which, guys, if you don't follow pickleball super closely and you're still listening to this podcast, this is Major League Pickleball. This is the team structured events, 4 players, a couple bench players, and teams are playing against teams in different matchups. There's been kind of this wave amongst MLP of it's like it's super exciting for players, and then players weren't really buying in. And lately it's kind of gotten a lot more exciting. But what we've talked about on a previous podcast is that it kind of feels like there's a big gap between the top teams and the bottom teams within the premier level bracket. And we really saw this on display in the last 2 events, because at MLP Dallas, you had I think you had about 4 of the 5 top teams were all at the same event.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for the teams that were at the event that aren't in that group because they had to play all the juggernauts, But MLP Dallas was super exciting to watch. Agreed. Some of the points were super intense. Players were getting really into it. And then the next event, MLP Salt Lake, it's kind of the opposite. You don't really have a lot of the top teams at the event because they were all at the previous event. And remember, not every team goes to every event. So I found myself tuning in to MLP Salt Lake and just tuning out, like turning it off. Like, I don't even really want to watch this. And maybe the games were competitive, but they weren't like the best teams or players or, I don't know. It was still fun to watch, but there's something about watching the top teams compete against the top teams because it kind of gives you that playoff type atmosphere.
I can't agree more. I've been harping on this the whole MLP season. I'm like, this is my personal opinion. You guys can all disagree with it. Maybe I'm in the minority. I think we have too many premier level teams. I think the gap is just too big because, like you said, when it's kind of close, it's exciting. It's very, very exciting. Like, we were looking at those top 4 or 5 teams and we were like, it's anybody's game. And that's what makes you want to tune in, because there's just such a gap. Like, if I turn on the TV and I see New York Hustlers, I'm turning it off.
Yeah, it's like I will go out of my way to make time to watch the Mad Drops play the fives.
Yeah.
Because you see Ben playing against Anna
Lee, and it's exciting.
I will, if I turn it on and it's the Hustlers versus the Hogs,
Or the Hustlers versus the Fives. You're like, uninterested.
Then it's like a blowout, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of discrepancy, and it was weird because last season, the Hustlers had a decently competitive team and they dropped everybody.
Yeah.
And they basically built a team from the challenger level.
Yeah.
And I think it would be more interesting if, you know, two to four of the teams dropped into challenger, but then that there was more action of people getting called up from challenger to premier, like kind of like, and maybe that's what their thought is. Like if they wipe out all those teams, then it makes it hard for people to break into premier because the top players are just going to remain on the top teams. And maybe now you have more changeover with the bottom premier teams and the top, challenger teams. I don't know, but it was very interesting. I don't know. I'm interested to hear if you guys watched these last two MLP events. Let me know in the comments below if you felt the same, because I was like, this is like an event.
We were all over Dallas, and then we were like,
yeah, I kept going back and watching the Dallas matches, and then I couldn't really sit through a Salt Lake match, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the last thing that we wanted to talk about was there's a new official ball of the professional tour, which this is a big deal because this trickles into amateur play. A lot of amateurs go and play at these PPA tour events. They go and play at minor league pickleball events. And Lifetime, which we know Lifetime Fitness has been blowing up their facilities with pickleball. A lot of the Lifetimes, they recently opened one near us in Tampa that has a bunch of pickleball courts. Like Lifetime is just all in on pickleball. So now they're even more all in on pickleball because they've come up with a ball and they've replaced Vulcan, and it's the Lifetime ball. I don't know the exact name of it.
I think it's literally called the Lifetime ball.
I think there's like an actual, L2. I don't know exactly what it is. We'll look it up. But we haven't played with it yet.
No, we haven't.
We have talked to some high-level players, pros that have played with it, and tell us what they said.
So this is, again, he said, she said. It's hard to say because we haven't actually played with it. But what I'm hearing through the grapevine is that the ball does not go out of round, which is huge. I mean, we've all been there at this point. Playing with balls that are out of round is just, it's annoying, So I hear like it's a very true bounce. It doesn't go out of round. The one thing that I'm hearing that I think is really interesting is that it's a hard ball, so it plays fast, and the bounce actually bounces maybe a little higher than what we've played with in the past, which is interesting because from this kind of perspective, this person who plays pro events says, it's maybe not incentivizing me to want to dink.
Because the ball kind of sits up like...
Even if you hit a good dink, the ball's going to sit up after the bounce.
Yeah, and we're already seeing more and more speed ups in firefights and games getting faster. So is this going to make it even faster?
Is it going to make it even faster? Is it going to maybe, again, not incentivize those longer dink rallies, which is kind of the more traditional way pickleball has been played? Is this just going to be a lot more firefights? Is it going to be a lot more attacks? It's interesting. Like I said, this is all rumor, speculation. I haven't tried it, but I was a little worried when I heard that. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of room for improvement with the ball. Obviously, we're a little biased because have gotten the privilege of playing with the Selkirk Pro S1. I think they did a really good job on that ball because it doesn't break.
Dude.
One little thing that I've heard from the community is that they wish that it was a little brighter, like it held its color. But we've talked to them at Selkirk, and they've said that part of the dye that you put in the ball, like the color of the dye, affects how durable it is. So there's a lot of room for improvement in the ball because you can have a ball that's like super bright yellow, like Franklin-esque, but then the balls crack all the time, and then you have balls that are super hard. And I think that the consensus is that, so I love the Pro S1 because they're great for drilling. They're great for coaching, great for facilities because that 1 year,
it doesn't break, dude.
1 year no crack warranty. It's pretty insane. But go ahead.
I was just going to honestly say we've been playing with this group of S1s for 2 years. I don't know if we've broken one.
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't talked to them. I don't know if they're working on another version of the ball. I'm sure they are, because Selkirk's always doing something. But, you know, I think that's interesting. To me, it'd be the perfect ball if it stayed.
If it's kept its color.
If it kept its color a little brighter. But again, that's part of the 1 year no crack warranty, that they keep the ball where this color dye, you know, the ball doesn't crack. So it's pretty interesting. So we've heard from this new ball that, I mean, I've seen it, I've watched it on television, and it looks pretty bright. You know, it looks pretty bright, look pretty crisp, looks similar to a Vulcan, but it does even look on the screen like the ball's bouncing a little higher. And I'm like, that's one thing that, like, obviously with the way the holes are placed in the ball, with how many holes there are, you can affect how fast the ball is. And so maybe it plays like a similar speed, but I feel like if it bounces higher off the ground, like, wouldn't it come off the paddle quicker too? You know,
I've heard it's fast.
So
I've heard it's a fast ball. Like as in, yeah, it
did
comes
you
off
think
fast.
that the Vulcan ball was as fast as the Dura? Because the Dura was before the Vulcan.
You know, if I'm honest, I actually think the Dura was faster.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think the Dura was faster.
Which is saying a lot, because the paddles have gotten only faster with Vulcan ball, but I do feel like the Dura was...
I think the Vulcan wasn't quite as... So maybe this is going to bring us back to more of like a Dura feel.
Yeah.
But the Dura like felt a little like hard and dense. Well, and I think that this one is supposedly hard, but it's a little like airier.
And the knock on the Dura, dude, that thing just breaks nonstop. Like, no durability.
Dura in cold weather, you're in trouble.
You're gonna go through.
And they used to be kind of expensive.
Yeah. So you know, R.I.P. to the Dura days.
But I do think that, like, hopefully this lifetime ball is a step in the right direction for the industry, because I think that there's a lot of room for improvement with the ball still.
Yeah.
You know, I think Selkirk made, you know, huge leaps in terms of being able to achieve something that doesn't crack. And I'm interested to see, like, you know, I've heard this one doesn't go out around, but does it crack? You know, that was kind of the issue. That you bring up a good point. Like with the Dura, it didn't really go out around a little bit. It cracked a lot. You know,
I've heard,
but the Franklins go out around.
I've heard that the lifetime ball is really durable as well. Again, all he said, she said.
Yeah. So looking forward to playing with it, just see how it plays. But it does kind of trickle down to the amateur. Amateur. Does trickle down to the amateur. Tongue twister. It does kind of trickle down into the amateur scene, because people that sign up for tournaments want to practice with the ball they're going to play in a tournament with. Did I just speak way too fast? Or like, that was insane.
You sounded like an auctioneer.
Like trickle down to the amateur, or trickle down to the amateur. Guys, help me. Okay. It's late. It's been a long work day. That might be our cue to sign off.
Yeah, that's going to be wrap it up.
All right. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on today's episode of the Pickleball Connection podcast. Let us know in the comments below if you have any suggestions for a future episode or topics you want us to talk about, and we will see you in the next one.